My parents lived in a megapolis. Dad was an office worker, and Mom was a housewife, and I was a high schooler. Basically, we were an ordinary family. We often had burgers for dinner. Who are you looking at? Those are some random rich people. We're over here.
I wish I had that much money. I'd buy myself a yacht and build a huge villa.
My dad was always drooling over other people's wealth, but that's not what this story is about. Hi, I'm Zoe. Before we get started, please like this video and subscribe to the Private Diary channel. I'd always liked poetry, and as much as I loved reading poems, I loved writing them even more. But I couldn't remember the last time I'd had a chance to get some peace and quiet and write something. The thing was, a year ago, my best friend Irene's mother died. Irene took the loss hard. Ever since then, I'd been spending all my free time with my friend. After all, as soon as she was left alone, she immediately fell into depression. I was very worried about Irene, and I did everything I could to cheer her up. The ambulance has arrived. We'll cheer you right up.
Thank you, Zoe. I don't know what I'd do without you.
I was just trying to be a good friend. But over time, something went wrong, and I basically became Irene's babysitter. She couldn't even spend a minute without me. Heck yeah! I'm finally gonna soak in a bath and write some poetry.
Zoe, I'm sad. I need you.
I'm on my way. Irene and I went shopping, and then I got a call from my mom.
Zoe, your father collapsed and was taken to a hospital.
Oh no! I'm on my way. I had to leave my friend and run to the hospital. Dad was lying in a ward, and Mom was holding his hand. Soon, a doctor came and explained that Dad had heart problems.
I think they were caused by work-related stress and the air pollution.
He advised us to move out of the town for a while so my dad could recover. My parents rented a small house in a town called Silent Rock, and we prepared to move. Irene almost had a panic attack when she found out.
Zoe, please don't leave.
It's only for a few months.
That's an eternity.
I didn't want to leave my friend alone either, and I even thought about staying with her, but my parents wouldn't let me.
I'm sorry, Zoe, but I'll have to get a job now, so you'll need to look after your dad.
In the end, I had to move to Silent Rock with my parents. It was a quiet and beautiful place. The population there was so tiny that I turned out to be the only blonde in the whole city. Can you believe it? Strangely enough, for some reason, Dad demanded that I not tell anyone our new address. To be honest, the connection in Silent Rock was so terrible, I wasn't sure I'd be able to tell anyone where I was even if I wanted to. My phone was all but useless. Dang it, it's like I'm stuck in the Middle Ages. I had to climb a high mountain to talk to Irene. It was the only place with service, but to conquer that peak was by no means easy. I've gotta say though, it was worth it. The view of the city from the top was stunning. It took my breath away. Hi, Irene. How are you?
Terribly lonely without you. It's like you're on another planet.
Come on, I'm closer than you think. I knew Dad didn't want me to tell anyone our new address, but I did it anyway. I promise I'll call you every day.
I'll be waiting.
Meanwhile, my mom got a job at a local veterinary clinic. That meant that I had to do all the housework and take care of Dad by myself. I had no time or energy left for my hobbies. But that wasn't the worst part. One evening, Mom and I went to the store, and the locals would not stop side-eyeing us. They were wary of the new people in town, and they called us outsiders.
No one moves to tiny cities like ours for no reason. You're right. Outsiders are nothing but trouble. Remember what happened a year ago?
Don't remind me. What happened a year ago? I was dying of curiosity, but I couldn't talk to anyone about it because I hadn't managed to make any friends. My new classmates avoided me like the plague. There were also two haughty girls, Lucy and Barbara, and they started picking on me as soon as I arrived. I always stood up to them though.
Hey Zoe, did you get lost on your way to school today?
What?
Well, your brain's so tiny, you probably have a memory like a goldfish.
Seriously? Is that the best you can come up with? Come back when you've bought yourself a new sense of humor. To be honest, even the teachers and the principal treated me badly, and they made it clear that our family was not welcome in the city. Every day at school was a battle for me. One day, my parents and I were watching a movie late in the evening when someone knocked on our door. Dad suddenly turned white as paper and started to panic.
Everyone, go to the basement now.
What if someone just needs our help? I didn't listen to Dad and I opened the door. To my surprise, I saw Irene. What are you doing here? My friend burst into tears and said she couldn't bear to be alone any longer, so she'd run away from home to come and see me.
Can I stay with you?
Of course, come in. I had to lie, and I told my parents that Irene's father had let her stay with us. Dad was furious when he found out that I told my new address to my friend. I didn't get why he was so mad. He'd been acting weird lately. Irene and I spent the night in my room, and in the morning, her father came to drive her back. He'd found out where his daughter'd run off to from her history of taxi rides.
Dad, please, can I stay at Zoe's? No, we're going home.
He scolded Irene for running away and dragged her back home. I felt sorry for my friend, but I couldn't do anything to help, especially since I already had plenty to worry about. Lucy and Barbara wouldn't leave me alone. The next morning, those wackos were up to no good again. I was sitting in class next to a cute but quiet guy called Thomas. At one point, I left the classroom to get some chalk, and when I came back, Lucy and Barbara were throwing glances at each other. They looked terribly suspicious. I reached into my backpack for a pencil and barely held back a scream of horror. There was something slimy inside. Ew! A second later, a frog jumped out of my backpack and onto the teacher's desk.
Zoe, is this some sort of prank? Go to the principal's office now.
Lucy and Barbara roared with laughter. It was clear who was behind it, and I told the teacher what had actually happened. Thomas was sitting next to me. He must have seen those witches put the frog in my backpack. Isn't that right? I looked at him hopefully, but to my surprise, he turned away indifferently.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, was that right? Everyone was conspiring against me. Thomas pissed me off, and I called him a heartless fool. The principal punished me. I had to stay behind after classes and mop the floors. It was so unfair. I was tired of dealing with my school bullies and taking care of my dad. But still, I climbed up that mountain every day to call Irene. One day, my friend told me there was a new teacher at her school. Apparently, they'd become fast friends.
Miss Molly is so cool. She likes Blackpink, and I love her outfits. I don't even mind that she's been flirting with my dad.
Irene sent me a picture of her teacher while we talked, but the connection was so bad it refused to load. I'll look at it later when the connection's better. My friend became very attached to Miss Molly. To be honest, it was a relief. If she had someone else in her life other than me, I wouldn't have to babysit her anymore, you know? I had to stay at school after classes and mop the floors in the hallway as punishment. Everyone hates my family just because we moved here from a big city. It's not fair. Mr. Heartless suddenly appeared out of nowhere and said he would help me. Who are you and what'd you do to the real Thomas?
Zoe, I'm not a jerk. It's just that, you know what, it doesn't matter. I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you. Let me make it up to you.
He took a second mop and started helping me. At one point, he even moonwalked until he slipped and fell to the wet floor. We talked and we laughed as we worked. I wasn't expecting to like Thomas, but I did. His warm smile could melt ice. Doing the housework and looking after Dad was taking up more and more of my time and energy by the day. I hadn't called Irene in days, but that evening, I promised myself I'd do it no matter what. I'm only gonna lie down for just a minute, but I was so exhausted that I was asleep before my head had even hit the pillow. When I woke up the next morning, the first thing I did was climb up the mountain and call Irene. My friend blew up on me.
You forgot about me, you traitor. But whatever, Miss Molly's moving in with us. She gets me, and she's always there for me.
Irene was screaming so loudly, I couldn't get a word in. When she hung up, I trudged back home and sat down on the porch, miserable.
Hello. Being sad on such a beautiful day is a real crime.
I looked up and saw Thomas with a fishing rod in his hands.
Let's go fishing. Why don't you tell me what's bothering you?
I told him about Irene on the way to the lake. Thomas looked me in the eyes and said something that I really needed to hear.
Zoe, you shouldn't be responsible for your friend's happiness. Find some time for yourself.
I nodded and I felt myself blush. Soon we came to a lake. OMG. It was so beautiful there. We fished, walked along the shore, and talked. I even managed to catch a fish with Thomas's help. It wasn't anything to write home about, though.
Never mind. You'll have better luck next time.
I suddenly felt a surge of inspiration and I wrote a poem. I read it to Thomas and he loved it.
Wow, you're so talented, Zoe.
It was a magical day, but when I got home to my parents, Dad immediately ruined my mood. He shouted at Mom and then at me for leaving him alone. To be honest, I had a suspicion that he'd recovered a while ago, but he got so used to getting special treatment, he didn't want to give it up. The next morning, Thomas came over and said that the annual Harvest Festival was going to take place in the city center that evening.
I'm going shopping to the nearest big city. You want to join me?
Heck yeah, let's go! We got into his pickup truck and hit the road. I enjoyed Thomas's company, read him poems, and looked at the beautiful scenery outside the window. That romantic trip wasn't one I was ever going to forget. Soon, we arrived at the store and bought everything we needed for the Harvest Festival. And then, I got a notification that the photo Irene had sent me had finally loaded. The connection there was better than the one in Silent Rock. Oh, Thomas, wait a second. I want to look at the photo of Irene's future, stepmother. He glanced at the the picture and turned white as snow.
Zoe, your friend is in danger.
What are you talking about? And then Thomas told me what had happened in Silent Rock a year ago. It was a dark story. A nice woman moved to the town and quickly befriended the locals. While everyone was having fun in the city center during the Harvest Festival, she snuck into a bunch of houses, stole everything of value, and ran away. It turned out she was a fugitive, and she'd moved to Silent Rock to lie low.
She stole the watch that I got from my grandfather. That's why we were all so wary of your family.
You thought we were trouble too? Wait, are you saying that Miss Molly is a criminal?
Yes, I'm sure she's up to no good again.
It was a disaster. I called Irene and I told her that her kind teacher wasn't who she was claiming to be. But my friend was Miss Molly's biggest fan and she didn't believe me.
Oh, by the way, Zoe, some shifty guys came around and asked us about your family. I gave them your new address. Well, bye.
I had no idea who those people were. All that worried me at the moment was Irene's safety. So I dragged Thomas to the nearest police station. We showed the cops a picture of Miss Molly and told them where they could find her.
Good job, kids. We've been looking for her for ages. She's not getting away this time.
Thomas and I got into his pickup truck and headed back to Silent Rock. I was worried out of my mind. What if she hurts Irene? Maybe we should go to her place.
Zoe, we did everything we could. Leave the rest to the police. Sometimes you should stop trying to help and think about yourself.
It's been one thing after another. Dad's illness, moving to a new city, our fight. Thank you for everything you've done, Thomas. It's like you're my umbrella on a rainy day. He turned red as a lobster and my heart started pounding. When we returned to town, it was already dark and the festival was in full swing. Everyone was there, even my parents. I was really happy to see my mom having so much fun with our new neighbors. Barbara and Lucy suddenly came up to me. I tensed up, but to my shock, they were apologizing for picking on me. We thought the new girl in town would be a problem, but we were wrong about you. I didn't want to hold a grudge against them, and I forgave them for everything. And then Thomas spun me around in a dance under the starry sky. We were so close that our lips were almost touching. But then I heard raised voices and I recognized one of them. Excuse me, Thomas, I'll be a minute. Just as I thought, Dad was standing in the middle of the crowd and criticizing the festival. The punch wasn't sweet enough and the music was too boring. I felt ashamed of him and I scolded him like he was a child with no manners. Quit acting like you're the king. Respect the locals. Then I remembered that some shifty guys were looking for us, and I asked Dad if he knew who they might be. Before he could answer, we noticed some thugs prowling through the crowd. They clearly weren't locals and they looked dangerous.
Dang it, they found us.
Dad grabbed Mom and me and dragged us back home.
Pack, we're leaving. Hurry up.
Needless to say, Mom and I were lost for words. Dad, you ran way too fast for someone with a heart condition. I'm not moving until you explain what's going on. Dad had no choice but to admit that he was perfectly healthy. He'd asked his doctor friend to say that he was ill so Mom and I wouldn't ask him any questions. Mom and I exchanged shocked glances, and Dad went down to our basement and came back a couple minutes later with a bag full of money. I was still staring at him, speechless, when those goons burst into our house. It turned out my dad had stolen money from those criminals. I knew he had dreamed of being rich, but clearly he'd crossed a line. Now I knew why he decided to hide in such a small town. Dad grabbed us again and dragged us towards a window.
Let's run. The money's our ticket to a better life.
Everything was happening so fast, but then Mom pushed Dad away, grabbed the bag with the money, and handed it to the thugs.
I don't know who you are, but forgive my idiot husband. This must be yours.
They counted the bills and smirked at Dad, who was cowering in the corner of the room.
We were going to teach him a lesson, but since we got the money back, our job here is done.
They left, and Dad went ballistic.
What have you done? We would have never had to work again if we'd kept that money.
His words made my blood boil, and I stood up for Mom. And spend our whole lives on the run? No thanks, Dad. How could you risk your family's safety out of greed? We spent the rest of the evening arguing, and soon after that, Mom divorced Dad. I fully supported her. Mom and I said our goodbyes to Silent Rock and moved back to my hometown. To our horror, we found out that Dad had saddled us with huge debts.
Zoe, maybe we should sell the apartment? We'll pay off the debts, and we should still have enough money to buy a small house in Silent Rock.
I was all for it. After all, I loved that cozy town and the people in it with my whole heart. Before our move, I went to Irene's place to make up with her and ask her what happened to Miss Molly. It turned out that the police had arrested that witch.
She was gonna rob us, can you imagine? Thank you for ripping my rose-colored glasses off, and for being there for me after Mom died. It was a hard time for me, but now I'm seeing a therapist and I'm ready to move on.
I hugged my friend and I said that she should visit us on holidays. And then I saw something familiar on her bedside table. Irene, where did you get this?
It fell out of Miss Molly's purse.
Do you mind if I take it? It belongs to a good man.
Yeah, no problem.
I said goodbye to Irene. Soon, Mom and I threw a housewarming party and invited all our new neighbors to it.
I don't know which flowers you like, so I brought you a cactus.
That's so sweet of you. Yeah, I got you something too. I handed Thomas his grandfather's watch. That's what Miss Molly had dropped at Irene's place. Thomas looked at me with stars in his eyes, and then he kissed me. I closed my eyes and I enjoyed the magical moment. Mom and I are very happy in Silent Rock. This place has become my home, and it's given me a lot of inspiration. What inspires you? Tell me in the comments down below.
Will you read me one of your new poems?
Of course.